Chapter 9. The Substitute Sacrifice. The plan consumed Liam's every waking moment for the next 2 weeks. He mapped out routes through the city, studied surveillance camera locations, and researched the schedules of women who worked late shifts in isolated areas. The methodical preparation felt like academic research, which, in a way, it was. He was researching the most efficient way to cheat death itself. Clara noticed his renewed energy and focus, mistaking it for healthy processing of his grief. She encouraged him to take evening walks, thinking the fresh air would help clear his mind. She had no idea those walks were reconnaissance missions, that her loving husband was stalking potential victims in the shadows between streetlights. "You seem so much better lately," she said one morning as they shared coffee in the kitchen. "I was worried after your father died that you might fall into the same depression he did." "I'm working through some things," Lem replied, which was true in the most literal sense. "I think I understand now what needs to be done." Clara smiled and kissed his cheek before leaving for school. The casual affection made his chest tighten with something between love and loss. Soon, very soon, he would save her from the fate the casket had ordained. She would never know what he'd sacrificed to protect her, but that was acceptable. Heroes weren't supposed to receive recognition for their necessary deeds. That evening, Liam made his final preparations. He loaded a gym bag with rope, zip ties, a change of clothes, and the hunting knife his father had given him for his 18th birthday. The blade was sharp enough to cut through bone, though he hoped precision rather than brutality would be required. At 9 o'clock, he told Clara he needed to run to the hardware store before it closed. "At this hour?" she asked, looking up from the paper she was grading at the kitchen table. "Emergency repair for the basement sink," he lied smoothly. "Water's been dripping all day, and I don't want it to get worse overnight." Clara nodded absently, already returning her attention to her student's work. She trusted him completely, never questioning his explanations or suspecting the dark currents flowing beneath their domestic routine. "Drive safely," she called as he headed for the garage. "I will," he promised, and meant it. Tonight required perfect execution, no room for accidents or complications. The hardware store was indeed closed, its parking lot empty except for a few employee vehicles. Liam drove past without stopping, continuing to the industrial district where late-shift workers would be ending their day. The area was perfect for his purposes: poorly lit, minimal traffic, plenty of places to conduct business without interruption. He parked behind the abandoned warehouse and waited. Within 30 minutes, a woman emerged from the textile factory across the street. Mid-20s, brown hair, approximately Clara's height and build. She walked alone toward the bus stop, her pace quickening as she passed through pools of shadow between the sparse streetlights. Liam followed at a distance, his heart pounding with anticipation rather than fear. This was the moment everything had been building toward, the culmination of months of supernatural revelation and careful planning. The casket wanted Clara's death, but it would have to settle for a substitute sacrifice. The woman, he didn't know her name, didn't want to know it, sat on the bench at the deserted bus stop, checking her phone while she waited. Perfect, isolated, distracted, vulnerable. The conditions couldn't have been better arranged if he'd choreographed them himself. Liam approached from behind, his footsteps muffled by the gym bag's padding. The woman looked up as he entered her peripheral vision, her expression shifting from mild curiosity to growing alarm as she registered his intent. "Excuse me," he said in the most reassuring voice he could manage. "I'm sorry to bother you, but my car broke down and my phone died. Could I borrow yours to call for help?" She hesitated, clearly torn between natural helpfulness and instinctive caution. In that moment of indecision, Liam struck. The zip tie went around her wrists before she could cry out, pulled tight enough to cut off circulation. A strip of duct tape silenced her scream, and the rope secured her ankles. The entire process took less than 30 seconds. He'd practiced the sequence dozens of times in his basement. "Don't struggle," he whispered as he carried her to his car. "This will be over soon." She fought anyway, of course. They always did in the visions, Clara included. But her resistance was futile against his superior strength and careful preparation. Within minutes, she was secured in his trunk, muffled but alive. Liam drove back through the city with meticulous attention to traffic laws, radio tuned to classical music, every appearance of a normal man heading home after an evening errand. No one looked twice at his sedan or suspected the cargo it carried. The abandoned quarry on the outskirts of town had been his destination from the beginning. Isolated, deep water, no witnesses. More importantly, it was where Clara jogged on weekends, a location that would connect the substitute sacrifice to his wife in ways the investigating officers would find compelling. He parked at the quarry's edge and opened the trunk. The woman's eyes were wide with terror about the duct tape, tears streaming down her cheeks. She looked exactly like Clara in the dim moonlight, close enough to satisfy the casket's requirements. "I'm sorry," Liam said, and meant it, "but this is the only way to save her." He carried her to the water's edge, laying her gently on the rocky shore. The hunting knife felt heavy in his hand, weighted with significance beyond its physical mass. This was the moment of transformation, from husband to killer, from victim of the curse to master of his own destiny. But as he knelt beside the bound woman, studying her terrified face in the moonlight, something unexpected happened. Instead of Clara's features, he saw his wife's elementary school students, children who would lose their beloved teacher if his plan succeeded. He saw Clara's parents, who would grieve a daughter they'd never see again. He saw a future where his sacrifice had been for nothing, where the caskets simply found new ways to corrupt and destroy. The knife trembled in his grip. This woman wasn't Clara. Killing her wouldn't save his wife. It would only add another victim to the casket's tally, while accomplishing nothing meaningful. But as that realization crystallized, the woman's features began to shift and blur in the moonlight. The terrified eyes became Clara's eyes. The tear-streaked cheeks became Clara's cheeks. The supernatural influence that had been building for months finally reached its crescendo, overlaying his victim's face with his wife's until he could no longer distinguish between them. "Clara!" he whispered and raised the knife. The blade descended with all the precision of months of planning, all the desperate love of a husband trying to save his wife from a fate worse than death. Blood splashed across the rocky shore, dark and warm in the cool night air. When it was over, Liam sat beside the body for a long time, watching moonlight reflect off the still water. He felt empty, hollowed out, but also strangely peaceful. The casket's vision had been fulfilled, the curse satisfied. Clara was safe now, protected by his sacrifice and his willingness to become a monster for her sake. He loaded the body into his car and drove home, already planning his story. A break-in, perhaps, or a random attack. Something that would explain Clara's absence without implicating him directly. The police would investigate, but they would find no connection between a loving husband and his wife's tragic disappearance. The basement casket would show no more visions now that its hunger had been fed. The Carter family curse would end with him, broken by his willingness to give it what it wanted while protecting what he loved most. Liam pulled into his driveway at 2:70 a.m., exhausted but victorious. He'd cheated fate itself, outsmarted a supernatural force that had claimed generations of his family. Clara would wake in the morning to find her husband transformed but triumphant, a man who had literally moved heaven and earth to keep her safe. The house was dark as he entered through the garage, carrying the gym bag that now held blood-stained clothes and rope. He would dispose of the evidence properly tomorrow after Clara left for work. Tonight, he just wanted to hold his wife and feel the warmth of the life he'd fought so hard to preserve. But as he climbed the stairs to their bedroom, Liam noticed something that made his blood run cold. The door was locked, and from inside came the sound of Clara's voice, weak and terrified. "Liam. Liam, is that you? Someone locked me in here. I can't get out."